Well, I have to say it. You may feel the same way, but I'm missing the old days. I'm missing them a lot. There was this kind of way that I knew how to be. I knew how to act. I knew what to say. I knew how to be both alone and with others. While masked. I just I miss the old days. They keep talking about the new normal, and I find myself longing for the old normal. You know what I mean? Lent. I'm missing Lent. We're in the third week of Easter, and for heaven's sakes, I am really missing Lent. That is how I know how to be, that season that the church always sets aside for self-reflection, for really combing through who I am as a broken human being in the presence of God and others, how I disappoint, how I get stubborn and impatient. I really miss those days when that was the kind of the highlight of my religious life. You know, I think there's a lot of similarity between that kind of missing the old days and where the disciples find themselves in Luke's gospel this morning. Startled and terrified. Terrified kind of captures Lent for me because I have this hyper awareness about how I don't measure up. You may have that same experience. The songs that we've sung already, the other lessons that we've heard, tell us that we are never afraid, that we can be filled with joy. But, I miss the old days of Lent. That kind of shame that we hide. Peter was experiencing that very morning. Can you imagine? He probably hadn't told anyone yet that he denied Christ, that Jesus warning him on Maundy, Thursday, that before the cock crowed 3 times, he would deny Jesus. I know about that. Those things where Jesus says, love your enemies. Are you kidding? I could betray Jesus at the drop of a hat on that one. Do good to those who curse you? Really? Yeah. I know Peter's betrayal almost, on a daily basis. And the other disciples, Jesus asked them simply to just stay awake in Gethsemane. But they keep getting sleepy, keep giving into their kind of human brokenness. The idea of being sleepy, I get that too. Sometimes the demand of God to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly, well, it leaves me tired. I miss the old normal, Lent. You know that Lent isn't as long as the Easter season? How curious is that? I think it's because Lent marries up with that human experience that we share, which always feeling bad about ourselves, knowing that we never measure up. I've been cajoling the staff. You say sorry too much. Heightened awareness that I do too. It's a crummy day. Sorry, as if I have anything to do with the weather, except within the household. It gets a little chilly there, or sometimes a little too hot. I might be sorry for that weather. Yeah. So there Jesus finds them. They're terrified, probably confused, disappointed in themselves beyond belief, knowing that after 3 years they didn't trust what he had told them. I babysat my grandchildren last weekend. It was a lot of fun. The one who's 8 made his sandwiches by himself every single day. What a gem. The 3-year-old, though, he almost drove me crazy. I bet every 20 seconds he said to me, more? Can I tell you something? More. Can I tell you something? And no matter how often he said it, I tried to pull up from the bottom of my heart something enthusiastic and warm, affectionate. Sure, Jeremiah, what? God has said to God's people throughout the ages, people, can I tell you something? People, can I tell you something? Jesus had told these disciples who were cowering and ashamed and embarrassed, that kind of Lenten season that we carry within us. He had told them over and over again, disciples, can I tell you something? God is love. God forgives. God rises to forgive and be compassionate and merciful. People, can I tell you something that you would hold on to? So Jesus says, look at my hands and my feet. In some ways, it almost has no impact on them. They're imagining it's a ghost. They can see the wounds as soon as he's there. And then he does this incredibly ordinary thing. He asks for a piece of fish. How extraordinarily ordinary. Something so human, something different than wounds. They have their own wounds, and it's hard for us to imagine that when we are in our own woundedness, that we can still do something extraordinarily ordinary, like being kind. This morning's gospel lesson has almost two trajectories. One dealing with this Lenten mood in a locked room of terrified people and Jesus appearing. And then on the other hand, Jesus telling them about the resurrection and what the consequences for you and I are. The consequences of the resurrection that free us from Lent. Free us from the apology. Free us from all the imagination that we had. If only I was better, smarter, faster, gooder, then I could experience the joy of resurrection. What God says, people, can I tell you something? That even in the midst of who you are as a broken person, you can reach out and touch joy. And that joy that you reach into, where you root yourself, where you find yourself set free from saying, I'm sorry, to saying, I love you. What an imagination that takes. And it needs to be redone, revisited daily. And sometimes living in resurrection joy seems absolutely, impossibly elusive. And we feel alone in that. And Jesus says, people, can I tell you something? You are not alone, for I am with you always, and I will send my Spirit. That's the key here. Jesus does not abandon us in our brokenness or in our longing for joy and freedom. Instead, Jesus surrounds us with his companionship. This newly risen Christ, wounded in front of us, surrounds us with compassion and mercy. Forgiveness, he says, announced to the nations, starting right here in Auburn. People, can I tell you something? The world is a broken place, and I invite you to step into that with a sense of confidence in the resurrection. Not only mine, Jesus says, but your resurrection as well, your resurrection from Lent, your resurrection from the ways in which you create harm and have harm done against you, your resurrection from a longing for revenge into a life of forgiveness and compassion. What enables that when it feels so elusive? People of God, can I tell you something? The Spirit has been sent to us to root us into communities like Messiah and traditions all around the globe. People of goodwill, longing to care for those who are marginalized, frightened, lonely. People who are having a death grip on their own experience of Lent, Gethsemane, the cross, the unrelenting pain. And because Jesus says, people, may I tell you something? The Spirit has been sent to you to free you so that you can love, so that you, like others, can experience the forgiveness that is lavish and complete. People, can I tell you something? You have been forgiven completely. People, can I tell you something? You are loved. That's our new normal and our old normal from the very beginning. Amen.